We are now live. Sound check. Public Works Committee meeting for Monday, May 2nd. Sound check.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the city's website, that the presentations and reports considered at this meeting are available on the city's website, and that members of the public can contact the clerk's office to acquire documents in an alternate format. As well, a reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings, and members are reminded of the 5-minute time limit, which will be adhered to during this meeting, and members can always submit another request to speak if you require more time to ask questions or make comments. Please note that quorum is present. And first up is approval of the agenda. Clerk McIntosh, any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, the following changes were made to the agenda. Item 6, delegation requests. A delegation, item 6.1 from Lachlan Homes, respecting Bayfront Park Transit Service Extension. Item 10.2 for today's meeting. Item number 7, consent items. 7.1, keep Hamilton clean and green committee minutes of March 15th, 2022. Item number 9, public hearings delegations. 9.3, Dana Ferguson respecting accessibility of traffic lights and pedestrian crossings in Hamilton, which was approved on April 22nd, 2022, was withdrawn. Item 12, notices of motion. 12.1, Beavers Park 688 Green Hill Avenue fencing replacement, Ward 5. Item 12.2, road resurfacing and sidewalk repair on Rolston Drive between Miami Drive and Mountain Batten Drive, Hamilton Ward 8. And 12.3, Phase 1, Ward 8, complete streets review implementation, installation of speed cushions and traffic calming measures at various locations, Ward 8. Item 13, general information and other business. Item 13.1, amendments to the outstanding business list. 13.1A, roadway safety measures on Aberdeen Avenue from Queen Street to Longwood Road. Item on OBL AZ. Current due date is May 30th, 2022, and the proposed new due date is Q2 2023. And 13.1 AB, complete livable better streets design manual. Item on OBL ABO. The current due date is May 30th, 2022, and the proposed new due date is July 6th, 2022.
Thank you, Elsie. Next up, we need a mover and seconder to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek. And to approve it as amended, please. Any discussion on the agenda? Sorry, I should have asked that before we put the vote up. Okay, it should be up.
And Councillor, I'm having trouble getting the vote up.
Okay, no problem. We'll take a show of hands. So anybody opposed? Remember, we'll just do thumbs for opposed for visual confirmation if we have to do it for the duration. So there's no opposition. On we go. That's approved. Moving forward to declarations of interest. Are there any declarations to announce, either disqualifying or non-disqualifying? Seeing none being indicated, we'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, which is approval of the minutes of the previous meeting on April 22nd, 2022. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the minutes? Councillor Powers and Councillor Ferguson, thank you. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, again, and anybody want to indicate opposition to the vote? Do so now so that I can see you. And seeing none, the approval of the previous minutes is unanimous.
Sorry, Councillor, the vote came up just after you asked for
Darn.
Sorry.
All right, flex your electronic voting, people.
Councillor Jackson, were you able to vote?
It's not showing on my eScribe. Thumbs up. Sorry.
No worries. And just a reminder to the rest of colleagues, hit F5, is it, to refresh, since we were having a bit of problem with the system loading there. And that carries 8-0. Thank you, colleagues. Moving on to delegation request 6.1, Lachlan Homes respecting Bayfront Park Transit Service Extension, item 10.1 for today's meeting. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the delegation request for today? Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Marula. Thank you. And that will be electronic vote. Two thumbs up, Councillor Jackson and Powers. Thank you. And registered, carried 8-0. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 7, consent item. 7.1 is the Keep Hamilton Clean and Green Committee minutes of March 15, 2022. May I please have a mover and seconder to receive this? Councillor Vanderbeek and Councillor Danko. Thank you. And that's also electronic.
Chair Nan, I've tried refreshing 3 times, no success. My apologies.
We'll keep an eye out for your thumb. And that carries. Moving on to public delegations and hearings. First up is 9.1, the proposed permanent closure of portion of Denison Avenue and Stony Creek. Public Works Report 22028 in Ward 10, as required under the city's bylaw 14-204. A public meeting is required. Notice of this public meeting was provided and posted on the City of Hamilton's website. The notice advised that anyone whose lands are prejudicially affected may appear before the committee. And registered speakers for today is, clerk, we have no one pre-registered to do virtual delegation.
That's correct. No one has pre-registered.
Okay, and as such, I'll have to have a mover and seconder. Councillor Pearson, did you want to speak before we close?
I did, please.
Okay, please go ahead.
And I'll be happy to move it, Madam Chair, but I just wanted to ask, and I'm not sure here, Satina's here. So I just wanted to be sure, and I've had numerous conversations with Satina. I've spoken to some residents on Denison who had concerns of this severance going through. So Satina, on page 4 of 5, I'm showing 2 opposed. I'm going to assume that they were the neighbors and that they will have the right, as I've expressed to them, to put in an offer if they wish to purchase this this property once it's approved to be severed, correct? Or to be sold, sorry.
Councillor Pearson, through you, Councillor Chair. Yes, that is correct. They've been put on real estate's list to be notified when the lands go surplus. This report is just strictly for the closure of the road so that it can be deemed land so that it can be sold through real estate's process.
Thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to be sure for the public record. Satina, thank you for that. And Madam Chair, I'll be happy to move it at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And this is the time to close the public meeting. So moved by yourself and seconded by Councillor Powers. Thank you. And then I guess we need to vote first to carry to close the public portion of that meeting. And that carries. And on to the report, moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek to put the report on the floor. And we've already discussed it. So thank you, Satina, for those comments to the councillor. And it is before committee for consideration. And that carries 8-0. Next up is 9.2, proposed permanent closure of portion of Crescent View Avenue in Ancaster. Public Works Report 22029 in Ward 12 as required under the same city bylaw 14-204. Public meeting is required, and notice of this public meeting was provided and posted on the City of Hamilton's website, and the notice advised that anyone whose lands are prejudicially affected may appear before committee. Clerk, to confirm there was no one pre-registered for virtual delegation today?
That's correct, Madam Chair. No one has pre-registered.
Thank you. In which case, then we need a mover and seconder to close the public meeting. Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Thank you. And it's before you electronically. And that carries. And on the report, moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Powers. Councillor Ferguson or anybody else have any questions on the report itself?
No question, but this hooks into the property that we recently sold, the 70 acres from the city of Hamilton to the Hamilton Conservation Authority. We did that last year, and the Crestview Road is an access point into that property. So we're just transferring this property over to the Conservation Authority to allow the public to get access.
Great, excellent. Thank you for that context. Committee members, it's before you electronically. And that carries 8-0. So moving on to delegations now, members of committee are reminded that questions of delegations are for clarification purposes only and not for debate. First up at 9.3 is Lachlan Holmes, respecting Bayfront Park Transit Service Extension, item 10.2 for today's meeting. Lachlan, if you could please turn on your camera. We heard you earlier, but if you could just say good afternoon so we can test your mic one last time.
Good afternoon.
Excellent. And you have 5 minutes.
All right. Okay, good afternoon, committee. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today and address the proposed new routing of the Waterfront Shuttle. I'd like to start off clearly. This is a profoundly disappointing and ill-thought-out idea. This is being sold to you, councillors, as an expansion of transit service. It is absolutely not. It is a cut. This is a cut to the route by approximately 1/3 of the current length. It is a cut that will make it harder for Hamiltonians, especially those that choose not to drive, to access Pier 8 and the waterfront in general. This cannot be called a transit expansion. When you see the two iterations of the route side by side, it is undeniably a cut. Ostensibly, this motion is in response to a motion passed last
Oh, Lachlan, we seem to have lost your audio.
year.
Can you hear me, Lachlan? Elsie McIntosh, can you try? Committee members, is it just me? No, okay,
No, we can't
everybody's lost
hear him either.
everybody's lost him. Okay. Lachlan, unfortunately, we didn't hear you. Your audio cut out for a while there. We only heard a portion of what you were saying as it relates to the distance that was being cut. Sometimes when you turn off your camera and just speak with the microphone and slide deck, that can allow us to hear you more clearly. So you want to try that? No worries. There's tech problems that happen all the time with virtual meetings, so no need to apologize. Just want to give you the time and make sure that you're heard clearly. So can you just test your microphone again, Lachlan?
Yeah, are we having any more luck now?
Yeah, I can hear you now, nice and clear. So we heard you in the first slide you had up with the service cut as you were describing it. You're about 1/3 of your way in, I would say.
All right. Well, I'll start from the second slide then.
Go ahead.
This is being sold to you, councillors, as an expansion of transit service. It is absolutely not. It is a cut. This is a cut to the route by approximately 1/3 of the current length. It is a cut that will make it harder for Hamiltonians to access the waterfront and Pier 8 in specific. This cannot be called a transit expansion. When you see the two iterations of the route side by side, it is undeniably a cut. Ostensibly, this cut is in response to a motion passed last year, which identified traffic concerns on Harbourfront Drive. I take no issue addressing traffic on Harbourfront Drive, but this proposal will simply not do that. Nor will it save the city any money. It will serve one purpose and one purpose only: to make it more difficult to enjoy our waterfront and the many amenities already present there today and those that will be added in the years to come. Let's talk about walking distances. In the staff report, it is identified that the walking distance between the current shuttle stop at James and Strawn and Bayfront Park is greater than the service standard of 400 meters. On the other hand, if you implement this proposed cut, the walking distance between the shuttle and Pier 8 will become 1.25 kilometers, as measured from James and Strawn to Williams Cafe. And it's not clear that a stop would be added at James and Strawn. If it isn't, this distance will be even greater. And if you can't walk that distance, you're now going to be paying what is essentially a user fee of $3.25 or $6.50 just to go down to the waterfront. Is that fair? The waterfront shuttle, and the waterfront generally, is one of the few things that people can enjoy for free, and it's important to a lot of people. People with young children who can't make the trek out to Confederation Beach. People who just need the serenity of nature and the water. People who go to the water to have a picnic or stop at the cafe. Why on earth would we take this away? It was made crystal clear throughout the planning of the Pier 8 redevelopment that our waterfront exists for all of us to enjoy. Yet we are now talking about making it harder for Hamiltonians to access their waterfront right as we're about to see condos going up. You don't need to be an expert in public relations to recognize that this is a terrible appearance to project. And it's an appearance that is absolutely unnecessary and which we can avoid. My presentation has focused on why this proposed cut is a bad idea, but I want to offer a hopefully productive suggestion, and this brings me to my last point. Can we bring shuttle service to Bayfront Park while maintaining shuttle service to Pier 8? Yes, we can. The staff report stated that to serve both Bayfront Park and Pier 8, it would take an extra bus, half of a full-time equivalent employee, and just over $100,000. And with all due respect to staff, I believe a small tweak could be made to the current route instead without requiring such an investment. Shifting the northbound route off of James Street and onto Bay Street, running until Strawn, where it would return to James, would result in a route that is almost the exact same distance as the current routing, and it would bring the bus within 200 meters of Bayfront Park. A few northbound stops would have to be moved over to Bay, but it would not be a major change to the route, and it would allow the shuttle to continue serving Pier 8 at the current 30-minute headway, given that neither distance nor turns would be increased. At the end of the day, if we truly want our waterfront to be enjoyed by all, why are we considering making it more difficult to access? Why are we making it more expensive to get to? Why are we here today considering a proposal that gives off the grotesque appearance of wanting to discourage people with lesser means from enjoying our waterfront, just as we're about to develop it with over 1,500 condos? I don't think there are good answers for these questions. It won't save a dime of taxpayer dollars. It will not address the traffic volume or speed on Harbourfront Drive. Members of the committee, please do the right thing. Don't cut the waterfront shuttle. Thank you.
Thank you, Lachlan. That's your time. And speakers list, do we have anybody there indicated? Yeah, Councillor Powers. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's a very excellent presentation. If you would allow, could I ask for staff to respond? And if they're not able to respond immediately, maybe it's worthwhile the effort in order to refer this to staff and then bring it back to the next Public Works Committee. But if staff can respond right now, I would welcome that. Madam Chair, back to you.
Councillor Powers, the presentation by the delegate is in reference to item 10.2 with a report coming forward, at which point you could ask questions. Is there anything that you wanted to ask of the delegate for further clarity before you have the opportunity at 10.2?
No, I will. No further points at all. I'll raise it in 10.2. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you, Lachlan, for being with us today. And we will now need a mover and seconder to receive the delegation. Moved by Councillor Vanderbeek. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Pauls. And that's just receiving the delegation, Councillor. Councillor Pearson?
Just a question, Madam Chair, is that the vote came up, it had to do with Dana Ferguson, I think, withdrawing. It did not have to do with receiving Lachlan's. And I'm sure, just so Madam Clerk is aware, I voted yes, but that wasn't what I was voting on.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. I brought the wrong vote up.
Okay, so we'll apply the vote to receiving this delegation, or do you want us to revote? Elsie McIntosh.
Let's revote just to
Okay.
be sure.
No problem.
I will start that right now.
Okay, colleagues, to receive the delegation again. Please vote electronically or indicate. Yeah, it's on its way. It's taking a minute. There we go.
Councillor Pauls. Councillor Pauls, are you able to vote?
That's a thumbs up. Yeah. And that carries 9-0 in receipt of the delegation. Elsie McIntosh, do we do another vote for withdrawal, or do we move on to discussion items?
No, the withdrawal of the delegation was in the
Approval of the amended agenda. Great. Okay, on to discussion items 10.1, HDR 01, Kenilworth Reservoir soil removal and E-cell upgrades, Public Works Report 20074B. Mark Bainbridge, Director of Water and Wastewater Planning and Capital, is available to introduce the report. And Mark, if you could give an overview, and then we'll take our mover and seconder when the report is tabled. Thanks. Go ahead, Mark.
Good afternoon. Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm here to provide a brief introduction to the current report regarding our ongoing capital works project at the Kenilworth Water Reservoir site, one of the large drinking water reservoirs we have in Hamilton. Just as a reminder, this project started in 2020, originally scoped to provide structural repairs to the reservoir itself. As part of that process, contaminated soils were identified through soil testing, showing the presence of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs. And since that time, we have communicated to Council to receive direction for removal of that soil, and have tendered the new works to address the significant project changes as a result. Hamilton Water can currently report that the cover soil has all been removed and properly disposed of in the amount of approximately 12,000 cubic meters of material. But as part of that removal process, an unexpected material has been found beneath the soil in what is described as cementitious slag that is adhered to the reservoir roof structure. This material has also been tested, showing detectable levels of PAH that are considered low risk or lower risk than the soils removed, and technically not exceeding the soil test limits. But I would note that this is not soil, so technically those limits aren't directly applicable, and those test results are only for a very small portion of the slag that's been found. Staff are recommending today for removal of this extra material while it is currently exposed on site, and to eliminate complications if PAH thresholds or concerns do change in the future. It is currently estimated that 3,200 cubic meters of slag is present as isolated patches. It is cost effective to remove the material now while it is while the site has been cleared for this $7 million contaminant removal project. The material cannot be simply scooped up and is therefore beyond the scope of the contractor's soil removal task. The report before you is requesting $400,000 in additional funds for R.V. Anderson, our consulting engineer that's on the project, to support 6 months of additional consulting time for 2 items. Number 1, more consulting time needed to match the contractor's schedule that is longer than the pre-tender time estimate, which was the basis for the engineering effort. And 2, the extra time for the effort to remove the slag material that was discovered. It is noted that after this increase, engineering fees are still within a reasonable percentage of the overall project cost. The updated timeline for completion now will move towards the end of Q4 in 2022. There will also be additional construction contractor costs associated with the slag removal, but these costs can be accommodated within the contingency framework already built into their contract. With that, I've provided a little bit of that background, and I thank you for your time, and we'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Director. And we do have a speakers list. First up is Councillor Pearson, followed by Councillor Jackson, and then Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Pearson, please.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Bainbridge. I received an email, and I apologize I did not have a chance to follow up with Susan Jacob with regards to this report. But could you just clarify where is the additional monies coming from? Because there's a mention in her email of funds being taken from a project for the Eastern Sewer Interceptor or South Service Road and Fruitland Road to Green Road and Stony Creek to amount of $4,200,000. Could you just clarify, because I'm a bit confused. There's 2 projects named in here where the money's going to come from, but I don't see it in the main report before us.
Thank you. Director?
Thank you for the question. I believe we're taking money from our AEGD project, but I'll have to get back to the report just to double check that. Stuart Leach is our manager of capital delivery. Stuart, are you able to help me out with that? The source of the funds for the 400,000?
Yes, hi, Stuart Leach. The source of the funds for the Kenilworth project is the actual account for Kenilworth. So there might be a confusion with
So it's not, not AEGD transfer, Stuart?
We're not transferring from another account.
It's from, thank you.
Original.
It's within the original account for Kenilworth, thanks.
It's within the original account to Kenilworth, and then I see Director Jacob is also indicating. Go ahead, Director.
And I'd appreciate clarification just so I can sleep better.
Most certainly.
Thank you.
To you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Pearson. The report that you are questioning is more in 10.3. It's regarding Wellington Street. So it's not concerning this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll be back on that one then. Thank you.
We'll put you down. Next up, Councillor Jackson, then Ferguson and Marula.
Thanks, Chair Nan. Councillor Pearson, wards 4 and 6 would never poach from your ward, so don't worry about that. Anyways, thank you, Director Bainbridge. Appreciate this. And again, thanks to Councillor Marula for his leadership on ensuring that Council, by a unanimous vote a year or so ago, did the right thing to say, look, there's contamination. One consultant says remove, another says we can manage it. I'm glad we went with the removal option. Director Bainbridge, can you just give us a further status, either between yourself or Manager Leach? How is the removal going? Timelines, status of it, everything being removed safely? I see the downbound lane from the top of my ward to Councillor Marula's ward has been cordoned off, and traffic seems to be flowing all right during this whole period of time. So Chair Nan, through you, just further update on the status of how things are going, please, Director.
Through the chair, certainly I think everything is going according to plan. Councillor, thank you for the question. We've moved a large number of truckloads of soil off of the site. I have not heard any complications either. And again, as we sit here today, the soil component is essentially removed from the site. So we are progressing as planned. and that soil material is now no longer on the reservoir site. It's just this consolidated slag material that is left underneath in small patches, relatively smaller areas on the roof. So we're proceeding according to plan. With this particular change, it will take us a little bit longer to get the project done, but nothing has been problematic so far that I'm aware of.
Director Bainbridge, wonderful news, further peace of mind for the entire mountain community that relies on this reservoir for its pristine, wonderful Hamilton drinking water. Great to hear. Thank you, and very happy to support the additional monies needed, Chair Nan, in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, we have Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mark. For many, many, many years, I built highways all over the province, but a lot of them in Hamilton. And there's pictures coming up.
Animating you while you speak, Councillor.
Oh, do you want me to go ahead with my question, or do you want to explain the picture?
At the chair's discretion.
Well, Councillor Ferguson, if you're okay with the interruption, Director, did you want to describe what you've put up here, and then Councillor Ferguson, please go ahead.
I can certainly do that. I just thought it would be helpful for council to see the site itself with the removed soil. So this is the concrete rooftop structure, and these areas of red identified on what is the south side of the reservoir, or the right-hand side of the screen, are the patches of consolidated slag material, just to give you a frame of reference.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor.
Okay, Mark, for many years I built highways around, and a lot of them in Hamilton, and slag was a very common road-based product. It was supplied by National Slag. They took in the slag from the two steel mills, and it was air-cooled and crushed down to a size that was suitable, and it made a fantastic road base because it compacted so well. And in fact, governments would pay a 20% premium on slag aggregate, granular A or granular B, because it was 20% lighter than virgin aggregate that you get out of the escarpment. And so I'm puzzled to hear why slag is a bad product now. We have literally hundreds of roads in Hamilton that are constructed with slag as the road base. Is this something new? Because, as I say, it does compact very well, makes a good solid road base, which sounds like exactly what's done here on this reservoir. So why is it so
Through the chair. So I guess this is not a road-based, Councillor. It's a structure that holds potable drinking water, and the slag has been identified to contain PAH materials. So I don't think we necessarily have a purpose for it being on the roof of the structure. It's not necessarily creating a compact road base or a supporting base for anything. It's simply found on top of the reservoir roof structure itself. So in that sense, it seems like it's a waste material that we've found just scattered in the various areas. And because it includes a PAH signature from the tests that we've done, and again, that test was a very small amount of this material, but there is a PAH there, so we'd prefer to remove it.
What does PAH stand for? Is that sulfur?
PAH is polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon. It's the byproducts of industrial process, and so it's not something that we are really wanting to see on site at a potable storage for treated drinking water.
Because the only reason the industry stopped using slag as a road base is because they found a way to get more value out of it by putting it through a cement plant grinder and making slag cement out of it, which means it's now salt resistant. So that's why you don't see distribution poles, light poles deteriorating around the base where it's exposed to salt spray. So it had a greater value, and so it got removed as a road-based material to go to this higher, better value. And I'm just puzzled why we're spending $400,000 to remove what has always been known as a superior product.
Through the chair, if that's a question I can answer, again, I'll just go back to the fact that test results have shown that there's a PAH signature within the material that we found.
So that means we'll have it in most of the roads in the city then?
Through the chair, potentially yes, but we don't have storage of treated drinking water beneath the roads. We do have pipelines that go through the roadways, but they're under pressure. And in this particular situation, we don't want to have any risk that PAHs are going to migrate through the joints in the reservoir roof.
Okay, but slag was used to backfill water mains with, also as an aggregate material. And of course, we made every business in Hamilton put in backwater valves, and if there's a break, it doesn't create a vacuum. Are we going to have the same problem then for all the roads where this slag was used as a road base when it just puzzles me why this is suddenly a bad product when it used to be a very superior product, and it's all over the city. It was a very, very common road material or sewer and water main backfill material because it compacted so well.
So through the chair,
I just have trouble spending money on something that I'm not sure it's a risk, and I'm not a chemist, so I can't help you there, and I have to trust our staff that understand what this acronym is and why it's a risk. But if it is, it's all over the city.
Yep, through the chair. Definitely good questions, Councillor. When it comes to the roadways itself and water main breaks, there are very strict procedures to follow in order to prevent external materials from getting into a pipe. So there's disinfection procedures and procedures for repairing water main breaks that prevent foreign materials from getting into that pipe. So we wouldn't want PAHs to get into the pipeline in a water main break situation either. But normally those water main breaks normally those water pipes are under pressure, and when they break, there's a very rigorous procedure in order to put them back into operation.
Okay, Madam Chair, basically, I'm simply going to oppose this, and it seems like a waste of money to me. And in my professional experience, it's been a very superior product. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Next up, we have Councillor Pauls.
Thank you. Can you make it more clear? Is it because of the location where the slug is that we are removing it? And it's not because it's all over our city. Like Councillor Ferguson raised some great questions. If it's all over our city, are we going to be removing it all? But is it because of the location and because it could cause problems to our drinking water?
Through the chair, yes, it is the location, Councillor. It is specifically as a result of the fact that we're trying to clean up the materials that are on top of a potable drinking water at the Kenilworth site. And so the location is key here. Our staff report, our staff are not recommending that we seek this material throughout the city to remove it.
And there's no danger right now that it's the slug is seeping into our drinking water. Let's make it clear, and we are removing it, which I will support it because of the location. But to make it clear that it has not affected our drinking water, can you make that statement and make sure people understand that?
Through the chair, yes, we don't have any evidence to suggest that there's any migration of the PAH materials into the drinking water system. We are doing regular testing through our laboratory and have not seen any results that are concerning at this time.
So the reason I'll be voting in favor of this is because of the location and because of the situation we are faced with. So thank you for your answers. Thank you.
Thank you. And that exhausts our speakers list. And may I please have a mover and seconder to put the item, I guess we started talking about it before I did that, didn't I? Councillor Marula and Councillor Jackson, are you comfortable? Yep. Excellent. Thank you. And it's before committee for approval.
Councillor Vanderbeek, are you able to vote?
Thumbs up. And that carries 8-1. Thank you. Now on to 10.2, Bayfront Park Transit Service Extension, PW Report 22027, Ward 2. Maureen Cozen-Heath, Director of Transit, is available to answer any questions we have about the report. First up, can I get a mover and seconder to put it on the floor, and then we can go from there. Councillor Pauls and, sorry, seconder, please. Then we can get into the discussion. Thank you, Councillor Marula. Okay, Director, did you want to provide some overview, or shall we dive into some Q&A?
Certainly, through you, Madam Chair. I'm joined today by Andy McLaughlin. Andy is a transportation planner in our Planning and Infrastructure Group. Just to give a brief background on the report, the proposed revision to the briefing that you're seeing before you is a result of the motion at the November 15th Public Works Committee hearing, where it was requested that we consider alterations to the route in order to address traffic speed and volume on Harbourfront Drive. Accordingly, staff reviewed the existing routing and are suggesting modifications to it to come into place in June of this year, aligning with our traditional changeover into summer service. And we'd be pleased to answer questions that you may have on the report in front of you today.
Thank you. And I see that Andy's indicated. Did you want to add something, Andy?
Thank you, Councillor or Chair. I just wanted to confirm the proposed changes to the Waterfront shuttle would come into effect in June of 2023.
Thank you for that clarity. So next year, no problem. That's important. Okay, open for questions. Committee members, Councillor Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank Mr. Holmes for his presentation. A lot of thought and drill down was in that presentation. I guess my question to start off with is either to Maureen or to Andy. So the analysis done by Mr. Holmes and the alternative route that he has suggested, was that part of any of your consideration before you offered this this option for our consideration?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, thank you to Andy for clarifying that this is coming into effect next summer. The reason being is it is going to tie with enhancements to the A line that will go into place in September, Route 20, for changes that will go into place next September. So a variety of options were considered, and what transit infrastructure was attempting to do was not add any additional resources. So we were sort of constrained by the existing number of resources that support that route and the existing number of kilometers. As you can see, one of the options presented illustrated the additional cost that it would take if we tried to continue servicing both sections of the route and the expansion. So, Andy, is there anything you would like to add to that?
No, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Powers.
So just a supplemental, as you mentioned the cost. I believe Mr. Holmes offered, well, I think he might have suggested what a cost was, but kind of as you were looking at your alternative routes and that, is there any ballparking as to what the additional costs would be in order to provide the optimal linkage on the routes and ultimately to Bayfront Park and and Pier 8?
We, through you, Madam Chair, we could consider that and bring that back in a future report.
Okay. I'm just going to hold off, I'll wait for some more questions. My thinking is that we just table this report to the next meeting, consider the proposal that, ask for staff to analyze Mr. Holmes' proposal and see if there's how we can do it and actually what the cost implications are. So I think that's the deciding factor, but I'll leave it to my colleagues to see whether they have any desire to pursue on this further. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Powers. Next up, we have Councillor Jackson.
Chair Nan, without Councillor Farr's presence here this afternoon, and my understanding from past conversations with him that, and I'm not speaking for him, so please, it's my recollection that through the Corktown community, it was something that they requested. So maybe a somewhat different option and suggestion from Councillor Powers, although I could support his suggestion to table till the next meeting, or in light of the staff recommendation, to my knowledge, Councillor Farr's involvement, can we approve this today? And there's 9 days before council with Councillor Farr's involvement to either refer it back at council or in 9 days, maybe he can provide us further with updates. I leave that as an additional option, Chair Nan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jackson. Well, maybe I could pivot back to staff in terms of these two options that committee members are considering. One is to refer back to staff with direction to take into consideration some of the points that we heard today from delegation, and then Councillor Jackson's suggestion of enabling the ward councillor to be able to provide context before we move forward as well. Director, your thoughts, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I don't really have a preference. It really would be whatever is the pleasure of council. I'm fine with either approach. I think it perhaps does make sense to take some of the comments that we heard back today from the delegation and have those analyzed and put those before you.
Okay, so analyzed and put before us as a full committee, so not before council, but as separate direction then. Okay. So if you could, Councillor Powers, do you want to try again putting your direction forward? Thank you.
Certainly, and I would look for direction from Maureen. Is I'm suggesting that we table this report until the May 30th meeting, which allows 25 days for the analysis. I guess my question through you, Madam Chair, before I finally place that motion, is that 25-day period sufficient in order to be able to react and come back with the analysis at the next Public Works Committee meeting?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah. Yes, through you, that 25-day time frame would be very reasonable, yes.
Okay, so Madam Chair, I'm very pleased that we table item 10.2 to the next Public Works Committee meeting on May the 30th.
Okay, and then Elsie McIntosh, we don't table anymore officially, right? We, is it going to be a referral?
Oh, you've got me on the spot about deferral and referral.
I guess the defer with direction for further analysis.
We're going to defer.
There it is.
To the May 30th Council of Public Works Committee meeting.
Excellent. It's about that time in the afternoon where it takes many minds. There we go. And it's moved by Councillor Powers. Councillor Powers, seconder for deferral. Councillor Danko, thank you. And committee members, that should be before you shortly for electronic vote. Thank you. That carries 9-0. And next up, we have item 10.3, which is the Wellington Street North Fall repair. We have Senior Project Manager Greg Wisman and Director of Engineering Services Susan Jacob available to answer any questions related to the report. If I could please have a mover and seconder to put it on the agenda, moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by myself. And it is, sorry, just to get clarity, if staff could provide a quick overview, and then I know that Councillor Pearson had some clarifying questions.
Good afternoon. Susan Jacob, Acting Director of Engineering Services. So this report is to request the permission for detailed design, tender and construction of repair of the storm sewer outfall at Wellington Street. So the funds from a less critical project, Eastern Sewer Interceptor Lining, was being reappropriated or requested to be reappropriated to the use for this urgent project. In 2020, the city retained R.V. Anderson Associates to undertake a remotely operated vehicle inspection inside the Wellington Street storm sewer outfall. Based on the recommendations outlined in the resulting assessment reported June 21st of 2021, it was concluded that further investigation is required and accurate location and condition of the sewer be identified. Further to that investigation, it was decided that the concrete roof along the entire length of the structure is in poor condition. The roof section and supporting columns under the rail crossing that were built in 1928 needed to be supported and to be repaired. So this report is again requesting for reappropriation of some of the funds, about $3 million from the Eastern Sewer Interceptor Lining project towards a more urgent required project here. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Director. We have Councillor Pearson and then followed by Councillor Danko for questions.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Susan. My apologies for jumping in and messing staff up on the previous report that I was confused on. So I just want to clarify. So what I'm hearing from Susan is that the sewer interceptor works and budgeting that has been approved for the South Surface Road, Fruiton Road to Green Road is not imperative. And Susan, I just want to clarify, is this also aligning, or is this something to do with the increased sewer capacity that we have to do for development from Green Road to Millen Road right now?
It is through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Pearson. It is not for increase of capacity. It is only for lining of the existing interceptor.
Okay, so and there is no issue at this time with regards to that Eastern Sewer Interceptor. When do we anticipate? I'm assuming this will come back in 2023 to be dealt with in the budget for the works in Ward 10, and I believe in Ward 8, if I'm not mistaken, as well. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that. I just want to be sure it didn't affect, because I got major issues with development and not having capacity, and I just wanted to be sure that that wasn't affected. Thank you, Susan. And I apologize, I didn't have time to call you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No worries. Thank you, Councillor. And next up, we have Councillor Danko.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My first question through you is just the legal obligation that the City of Hamilton has to maintain the railway over the structure. It notes that the railway is owned by and operated by the Port Authority. So I'm just wondering if there's a board order or formal legal agreement that obligates the City of Hamilton to maintain that rail service.
Thank you. Acting Director.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Danko, yes, we have been in contact with the Port Authority. It is important that we maintain the services. The construction will be from June to August, when the Port Authority does not have a lot of interruption. So it has been coordinated with the Port Authority.
Thank you. But just so I'm clear, we have a legal obligation to maintain that railway, because the easiest thing for the City of Hamilton would just be to, permanently remove the rail crossing and leave it as is.
Through you, Madam Chair, there are quite a number of industries that are affected if the railway doesn't continue. Bungie and Heinbecker are the two industries that I'm aware of, which are reliant on these railway.
Thank you. But just to make sure that we're legally obligated to maintain. I understand there's industries that that rely on that, but that would be the responsibility of the Port Authority. And if the structure needs to be replaced, if we're not legally obligated to maintain a railway crossing, then it should be the Port Authority that's responsible for maintaining that and making repairs as required.
Thank you, Councillor. Acting Director, in terms of the legality of the obligation?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll have to look up into the case of whether it is a spur line, and the railway was undertaken after the sewer was built. 1928 is when the sewer was put in place, but the obligation, I'll need to check on that and report back on it.
Is it possible then, perhaps Councillor Danko, since you raised these questions publicly now, we have until council to get clarity on that information. Director, is that possible to get clarity before council and ratification of this direction?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Great, okay. Perfect.
Thank you. And then a follow-up question and perhaps a proposal for a small change to item D is that, so this $3 million is coming out of an alternative project, but it's ultimately going to be part of the capital budget process. So that would be levy funded, correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's right. It's a rates funded project that we are reappropriating the funds for this project.
Sorry, it's capital budget process, not rates budget.
Yeah, it's capital budget.
So this council hasn't made a firm commitment on a stormwater management fee. However, that's expected to come prior to the 2023 capital budget or budgeting processes. And this is exactly the kind of project that could be funded directly from a stormwater management fee and not from taxpayers. So maybe at the appropriate time, Madam Chair, I could propose just removing the word capital from item D, and then that leaves it up to however it's incorporated into the 2023 budget process.
I see what you're saying. Okay. All right. This would be the appropriate time if you have no further questions, Councillor. We don't have any other speakers.
So I just propose that amendment then, just eliminate the word capital from item D so that it's just referred to the 2023 budget process. And then it gives us a bit more flexibility, whoever happens to be on council next term.
Okay, happy to second that. Any further questions on the amendment? Okay, seeing none, then that quick vote on the amendment, and then we'll go to the main direction as amended. Elsie McIntosh coming up.
It should be on your screen now.
Thank you. Thank you, and that carries unanimously. And then on the direction as amended, please. And that carries. Thank you, committee members. Moving on to motions, we're at 11.1. Joint action by City of Hamilton and Hamilton Police Services to improve pedestrian safety. Councillor Danko, if you could please introduce your motion and your seconder.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So this is moved by myself and seconded by Chair Councillor Nan. This is a joint action by the City of Hamilton and Hamilton Police Service to improve pedestrian safety. Whereas in 2019, Hamilton City Council approved the City of Hamilton Vision Zero Action Plan 2019 to 2025, which identifies that fatalities and serious injuries on our roads are preventable and that no loss of life is acceptable. whereas the Vision Zero Action Plan 2019 to 2025 recognizes that using a safe systems approach that focuses on safe drivers, safe speeds, safe roads, and safe vehicles is fundamental to achieving the plan's goals. Whereas a key component of the Vision Zero Action Plan is the City of Hamilton Strategic Road Safety Committee, whose mandate is to guide the implementation of the Vision Zero Action Plan and is comprised of members of the Public Works Department, Planning and Economic Development Department, Hamilton Police Services, Hamilton Fire Department, Public Health, Hamilton Wentworth District School Board, and the Hamilton Wentworth Catholic District School Board. Whereas in 2020, the City of Hamilton Council approved funding of 8 dedicated traffic enforcement officers with Hamilton Police Services. And whereas in 2021, Hamilton Police Service launched a 20-member centralized traffic enforcement unit to respond to traffic-related issues in the city with a strategic citywide approach with the goal of reducing collisions, injuries, and deaths for all roadway users. Whereas roadway safety efforts have resulted in a steady year-over-year decline in the total number of people being injured on City of Hamilton roadways since 2016. And whereas notwithstanding road safety and Vision Zero initiatives, the annual total number of fatal collisions has not trended downward, and there have been 8 pedestrian deaths in 2022 as of April. Therefore, be it resolved that the Traffic Operations and Maintenance Division, through their facilitation of the City of Hamilton Strategic Road Safety Committee, identify opportunities for enhancements to the collaboration of efforts specifically related to roadway safety improvements and traffic enforcement by leveraging annual collision statistics in Hamilton Police Services Collision Reconstruction Investigation Forensics. B, that the Transportation Operations and Maintenance Division, through their facilitation of the City of Hamilton Strategic Road Safety Committee, isolate specific dangers for vulnerable road users, pedestrians, and cyclists, and determine joint efforts that can be undertaken for both traffic enforcement and preventative measures delivered through infrastructure improvements. And C, that the Transportation Operations and Maintenance Division report back to the Public Works Committee regarding any roadway safety improvements and traffic enforcement enhancements or opportunities to improve pedestrian safety identified during the completions of items A and B, including implementation and identification of any funding and or other resource requirements. Well, that was a mouthful. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to speak to this motion, since this was placed on the agenda as a notice of motion 2 weeks ago, there's been an additional 2 very severe pedestrian injuries in the city of Hamilton. And, I think this council, this committee made a very serious commitment to Vision Zero back in 2019. Our staff, police, the school boards, fire department, public health have all been working towards implementation of those Vision Zero goals. And we have seen a downward trend of injuries, but this past year, just for whatever reason, we've just seen a completely unacceptable rise in the number of very severe collisions involving pedestrians. So what this direction is doing is leveraging the work that's already ongoing through the Hamilton Strategic Road Safety Committee, involving all of those stakeholders, and trying to look at some more strategic approaches that we might be able to take towards policing and leveraging the information and efforts that our Hamilton Police Services are already doing. And I think we heard recently really encouraging efforts through Hamilton Police, speaking to some of the specific initiatives that they are working towards. But through this direction, there's an opportunity for those discussions to happen and to, if there are any gaps, for them to bring those back to committee for us to consider if any additional resources are required. And just, one example that comes to mind is that often when our public works staff do an evaluation of a dangerous area of road, somewhere where we've seen collisions or statistics, or the public is saying that this is a dangerous area, we are investigating. We're looking for engineering solutions from the city's perspective, but oftentimes those have to be considered with enforcement. And just an example is Upper James and Mohawk has been identified as a high collision intersection. Our public works staff have gone out, they've done video analytics of that intersection and identified some kind of current and often dangerous actions by drivers, such as turning left on the once it's already yellow, sneaking in through the right hand on red when there's the pedestrians that are in their crosswalks, and things like that a red light ticket can't fix, and automated speed enforcement is not going to help. That it really needs on the ground systematic police enforcement for things like that. That it might not lead to a ticket, but that police presence in a very systematic ways is really part of the solution. And I know that again, Hamilton Police Services are already working towards this. But it's an opportunity to have some additional dialogue. And I know behind the scenes that's already happening. So I know there's already very encouraging news on that front, but this is a way for us to, as a committee, to formally put that direction there and keep track of the efforts that are happening behind the scenes with our staff and everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We do have a speakers list of Councillor Jackson, then followed by Councillor Marula.
Thank you, Chair Nan. And yes, I'm going to strongly support Councillor Danko's initiative and his motion. I would say that in his therefore be resolved A part, the last sentence that says that traffic enforcement by leveraging annual collision statistics and Hamilton Police Services collision reconstruction investigative forensics. Just given my years, past and current, on the Hamilton Police Services Board, not speaking for the chief, but I would humbly suggest that may be problematic from both a legal and privacy standpoint. However, at least it's worth an exploration to see if the police can offer up some collision statistics and reconstruction investigation forensics of what's happened on a particular location, that intersection that seems to be spooked with more incidents and accidents or fatalities. So, but I suspect that that may be difficult to retrieve that type of information. And again, even though it's all part of the Hamilton Strategic Road Safety Committee, Chair Nan, I mentioned this last time, and I'm just going to reinforce this, and maybe the committee can bring some form of a representative from the provincial government, particularly from the Attorney General's office. I look at the recent fatalities over the last little while. Somebody was driving on probation. Somebody was drunk, wiped out 4 people. Somebody was driving the wrong way, took out an esteemed citizen of our community. Someone had multiple convictions on their driver's license, still was allowed to drive, and a young life was wiped out. So all I'm saying is, Chair Nan, everything we're doing with Vision Zero, redesigning streets, making them more pedestrian cycling friendly is noble, is worthy. Continue on as a city and council, absolutely. But there's got to be a greater, not only enforcement, but a greater punitive occurrence and outcome from the other end of the spectrum when you have people on probation still driving the wrong way ridiculously, drunk at 2 a.m, and with the multiple of previous infractions. I'm going to stay on that theme because I think that needs to be part and parcel of hopefully having absolutely no fatalities in a given year in the future in our city. Otherwise, I am supporting Chair Danko's motion. Thank you, Chair Nan.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, we have Councillor Marula, followed by Councillor Ferguson. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I strongly support the motion, but I think we're looking for solutions in all the wrong places. And you look at the engineering components and the punitive aspects, folks, the police can't be at every intersection, on every street, in every neighborhood in the city. We all know that. And as much as we would love them to be, we know it's not going to happen. So you look at where this is all really the foundation of the problem is the behavior of the individual driver. But it's remarkable how every single individual driver that is part of the problem somehow only becomes concerned with that type of behavior when it's in their neighborhood. And most of these infractions are actually your neighbors. And so we need to look at this. And in my years in behavior modification from working in the Catholic Board and the Ministry of Health, one thing that we have to understand is we have to firstly recognize the presenting problem. And right now, we are aimless in doing that and looking at these solutions in all the wrong places, whether it be the engineering or whether it be we're chasing the problem. And the problem is with the individual driver. Years ago, I brought forward two motions. One, to try to limit, engineering-wise, at production, the speed of vehicles. So I'm not quite sure why vehicles have to go 250 kilometers an hour. So years ago, we asked the federal government to actually create legislation to actually prevent vehicles from going a certain speed. I don't know whatever happened to that. Obviously, the auto industry has a great deal of power. And also this whole cultural shift of the fast, furious, and stupid is getting bigger and bigger because of the glamorization of it in Hollywood. So this is a very complex issue that is not going anywhere soon. It's actually going to get worse. And without any sarcasm, the introduction of electric vehicles does change the entire landscape, because for years, and millennials will say, well, it's all about the emissions. Well, you take away the environmental climate change aspects, and now suddenly everyone thinks that it can drive around, and they will, because now you've taken away the climate change aspect. Now we've got to look at it from a pedestrian safety standpoint. That is our number one priority, I think. And I've walked like literally 2,500 kilometers in the last 2 years in the city and in Europe, but mostly in the city. I'm telling you right now, it's you and me, it's everybody. And until we recognize that we're the problem, it's never going to change. So we're chasing a problem and spending millions of dollars for a problem that's not going to be solved quite that easily. I just needed to say that, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, we have Councillor Ferguson, followed by Councillor Pauls.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. After listening to Councillor Johnson and Councillor Marula, it got me thinking too. I know in Ancaster, we don't have any speed cushions. We don't have any bump outs. We don't have any red light cameras. We don't have any speed cameras. And yet I can't remember the last time there was a pedestrian strike, despite the fact that we have very, very busy roads and very, very busy intersections. And so I think we're on, Councillor Moon and Councillor Jackson were on to something. The problem is driver behavior. And I've noticed a lot, others have too, that I've talked to. Not everybody, a number of people are flashing their finger at you and shaking their fist at you. And they just give you the impression they're more important than others are. I'm more important than them, so I'm going to do what I think. And so it's driver behavior. And, I will support this because it's a report back, but all these preventative measures we're doing, whether it be, speed bumps and so on, it's not fixing the problem in those areas. And I think Ancaster is an example of that, where we don't have pedestrian strikes. And I don't hear in many other suburbs either where we have many pedestrian strikes. So we just seem to have a big driver behavior problem out there. And it's the me attitude. I'm more important than everybody else, and I can do whatever I want. Seems to be what's setting in. And I'm not smart enough to have a solution to that, but it's a look at the person who struck the maestro, and what the heck, he had his driver's license suspended. He's driving the wrong way in a one-way street, and then took off, and because he thought he was more important than everybody else. And so I need some smart minds to put their head around this, and police are probably the right way to go. But I think I only have 2 beat officers in Ancaster, so we don't have a large police presence. I get a lot of complaints about that, but our crime stats are also way down. And so I don't know what's going on in society, but you look at the anti-vaxxers out there too. I'm right and everybody else is wrong. So I'm not sure why this is happening in society. I heard it's the Trump factor, which may be a stretch, but everybody got the "I'm more important than everybody else" attitude, or maybe COVID being locked down for so long had something to do with it. But there's clearly something going on, and it's not the design of the highways that's causing it. It's people don't look when they're making a turn for a pedestrian crossing, I suspect, because they're more important. They're in a bigger rush than everybody else. So that's my comments, but I will support it. But I don't think we need to look at the street design anymore, or, the police we've already added. I think it was 8 new officers from patrol officers to in track speeding. I mean, I live out in Alberton, where Highway Wilson Street goes down to 70 kilometers on a 4-lane road, and police are there harvesting constantly, almost every day. And so they're doing their job by trying to slow people down through enforcement. But you're not going to stop everybody because the police can't be everywhere. That's all I got.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Next up, Councillor Pauls, please.
And thank you. And of course, the intention is very noble. And I listened to my seasoned councillors, and I have the high respect for them, and I agree with them, what they said. But the reason I want to say anything to do with policing, I always want to make it clear that my son is a staff sergeant on the Hamilton Mountain, and I don't think this is a direct conflict, but I just want to mention it, and I will vote because I don't think I'm in conflict of interest, but I want the public to know my son is a staff sergeant on the Hamilton Police on the mountain. And I just want to add, I talk to my son quite a bit, and they're short of staff. I call my crime manager constantly, not only about traffic, but about neighbors' dispute, about parks, about everything. So it's not only traffic, it's everything. But this motion is well intended. We do want traffic accidents to stop. I gotta admit, on Sunday, my husband and I were going on Upper James to Stone Church, and we almost got hit by somebody turning the other way, and it was just seconds. So people are distracted. Whether you're walking, sometimes you're distracted, or driving the car. So we have to pay more attention our situations. And so, like I said, I will support it as a study, but I want to make sure people know that I'm not in conflict of interest. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So that's a non-disqualifying interest, Councillor. Thank you. Next up for second time, Councillor Danko.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just a follow-up on the discussion. I do really appreciate the perspectives of committee this afternoon. I agree 100%. There is a very severe driver behavior issue, not just in the city of Hamilton, but across Ontario. And, from an engineering perspective, when we design for road safety, we design for the 85th percentile, meaning that 15% of people are going to be doing something that's so outside of the normal that you can't possibly make the roadway safe enough for them. And that's, if they're that me attitude that was spoken about, or that's aggressive behavior, or they're impaired. There's limits to what we can, achieve from an engineering design perspective to make our roads 100% safe. But the overall goal of Vision Zero is still that every single injury, severe injury, and death is preventable, and there are actions that we can take to reduce and eliminate those severe injuries to pedestrians. So this direction here, I think, is really just focusing on the strategic alliances and partnerships that already exist with a focus on pedestrian safety, and recognizing the work that is already ongoing and has been quite successful in other areas, and just shifting some of that focus specifically to strategically what can we do for pedestrian safety. And I just want to address the issue Councillor Jackson raised about the forensics. I totally understand that, and I've heard that as well, that there's a challenge with police sharing forensic information that could compromise conviction, and that's the last thing that I think that we want to do is in any way compromise investigation or convictions. But I think there are some high-level information that police and our public works staff can collaborate on to figure out what the root causes are of collisions that don't get into, the specifics of forensic investigation, but at a high level understand, well, maybe there was where the person was struck or how fast the vehicle was going, or some of those details that don't get into the specifics of a court case. And I understand that collaboration is already happening, but this direction again just kind of gives some formal direction for committee to make sure that those talks continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Second time, Councillor Marilla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Someone just reminded me that I said I brought forward 2 motions, but only mentioned one. The other was in 2008, I believe it was having traveled to Europe as a result of my wife being from there. One thing that was distinctly different was that in Europe, the pedestrian has the right of way. So back in the day, I was courageous enough to bring forward this issue to try to bring to the forefront a discussion about the fact that in Canada, we made the vehicle predominantly a priority because we had geography to do that. In Europe, they've never had that geography. So they've always allowed the pedestrian to have the respect of that right of way. We're now in a position because of the road diets in the city, in this province, in this country, that we've literally created the same landscape as they have in Europe. So this would be more opportune than it was in 2008 when I brought it forward. And the reason why I did is because when I walked there, it really does not only provide you with a great deal of respect to the pedestrian, but I think it saves a lot of lives because they literally abruptly stop to allow you to cross. It's a powerful thing. Wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if this province were to launch something like this and shock the system? Because I think we need something to reset what's happening. At present, it's not working. Our roads are dangerous. It will continue to be so until our vehicles either slow the hell down, but behavior has to do that, and that's the only way it's going to happen. So maybe the driverless vehicle will help because they can then perhaps through engineering prevent a lot of these from happening in the future. But until we get that, we need a stopgap measure of some kind. Thank you.
Thank you. And that exhausts the speakers list. It's been duly moved and seconded. And committee members, if you could please vote electronically or indicate otherwise. And that carries. Councillor Powers, Vice Chair, if you could please take over the chair so I could introduce some motions as well.
Thank you. I have the chair.
Thank you. And through you, this is committee members 11.2, replacement trees for City of Housing Hamilton property at 430 Cumberland Avenue in Ward 3. And the motion is, whereas the urban canopy deficit in Ward 3 is best addressed by planting more trees and ensuring trees that must be removed for redevelopment purposes are replaced. And whereas increasing urban tree canopy assists in addressing health inequities. And whereas the City Housing Hamilton provides affordable housing to approximately 261 residents at 430 Cumberland Avenue. And whereas tree planting on City Housing Hamilton properties is not currently funded under existing city-funded tree planting programs, therefore be it resolved that A, staff be directed to supply, install, and maintain for a period of 3 consecutive years, including the year planted, 12 large caliper trees in coordination with City Housing Hamilton at 430 Cumberland Avenue at the upset limit cost of $5,700 to be funded from the Ward 3 Capital Special reinvestment discretionary fund as indicated in the motion, and B, the mayor and city clerk be authorized and directed to execute any required agreements and ancillary documents with such terms and conditions in a form that's satisfactory to the city solicitor. And to my committee colleagues, there is some work continuing
Sorry,
by...
Councillor, do we have a seconder to the motion, please?
I would
Councillor Pearson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Councillor, for that. So there is some work happening in the back to animate the outdoor space for the CHH facility, this home, by increasing the amount of space that's available for community gardening, community use for the tenants to enjoy the outdoor space. Earlier in the term, we also enhanced the outdoor space by ensuring there was a multi-use court, as well as bringing a playground structure right onto the property so that we could wrap around the residents in that CHH building with the appropriate amenities. And so unfortunately, the existing trees will have to be removed in order to facilitate the landscape design that CHH is pursuing. And this would be to replace the existing trees without having detrimental impact to the urban canopy in the area. So that's my motion. Thank you.
Okay, just a second here. Just going to the speakers list. I see nobody on the speakers list. Madam Clerk, please put up the vote, please, on this item 11.2.
Mr. Chair, would you? Thank you. Mr. Chair, that vote carries 9-0.
Thank you. Councillor Nan, I believe you have motion 11.3. Could I have a seconder to your motion, please?
Yep, Councillor Danko is my seconder for this one.
Certainly, please.
Thank you. So this is naming of a multi-use court at Woodlands Park at 501 Barton Street East in Hamilton in Ward 3. And whereas Woodlands Park is a City of Hamilton park that services the Gibson Lansdowne neighborhood adjacent to the Keith neighborhood and also serves so many more residents from across the city as well. Whereas Hamilton's Arkell Music Group have coordinated the fundraising of $80,000 to fund enhancements to the multi-use court at Woodlands Park. And whereas the multi-use court at Woodlands Park will be receiving enhancements such as a new professional level basketball backboards, spectator bleachers, acrylic court resurfacing, and an upgrade to the existing light fixtures. And whereas the proposed enhancements will foster community pride and provide a destination level sports court within the city's north end. And whereas Arkell's hosted one of the largest attended outdoor concerts at Tim Hortons Field in 2018 called The Rally, and is poised to repeat this achievement again in June this year. And whereas the Rally concert has a community and sustainable living focus in which the local artists markets outside the stadium have a vendor options there. A community bike ride is part of the concert. Partnership with Hamilton HSR to promote public transportation for concert goers, and an emphasis on inclusion and equality for all, with a large charitable component throughout. And this year, $1 of each ticket will be sold that is sold for the rally will be donated to Indwell to support not-for-profit housing and to support and for the supports that residents need who live in Indwell homes. Therefore, be it resolved that A, the multi-use court at Woodlands Park, 501 Barton Street East, be named the Rally Court by incorporating this name within the design of the acrylic court surfacing, recognizing the local music group and their community focus and contributions in our city. And B, that the mayor and city clerk be authorized and directed to approve and execute all required agreements and ancillary documents with such terms and conditions in a form that's satisfactory to the city solicitor. And if I could, through you, Vice Chair, I can't get any more of a feel-good motion than this one right here. My colleagues will remember earlier this year I moved a motion to allocate Ward 3 discretionary funds temporarily to enable these works to get underway while fundraising was finalized for a top secret community infrastructure project. And well, this is it. To Max Kerman and the rest of the Arkell's band members, thank you. thank you for being shining lights here in our city. Your success and talents is something that we're all proud of, and the way you continuously show up and support diverse communities across our city makes Hamilton shine brighter with love and respect. The Arkells wanted to refurbish a multi-use court and enable residents to play some serious basketball year-round and for years to come. Basketball has a very low cost barrier to play, and Ward 3 deserves great public courts with professional grade blackboards for all to enjoy. The Arkells care about good public space, and they've enabled this enhancement with no cost to taxpayers by fundraising $80,000 towards it. The donations to this project come from Hamilton basketball family and professional referee Ron Foxcroft and the Foxcroft Family Foundation, the Toronto Raptors head coach Nick Nurse and the Nick Nurse Foundation, superfan Nav Batali, and Michael Bartlett, CEO of Canada Basketball, who's been offering lead consultancy on the specs of this project. And thank you also to city staff, to Parks project manager Kevin Kernahan and manager Kara Bunn for all their support, and as well as other city staff in shepherding this partnership. Thank you to everyone who's made this possible, and I really look forward to, if this motion passes at committee and is ratified by council, welcoming everybody to the newly refurbished court slated to open and launch the week of June 25th, when the Arkells will be hosting their hometown concert at Tim Hortons Field this summer. Thank you.
So before I go to the speakers, the only thing's missing is that if the Arkells are practicing there, and there's a call out for the noise bylaw people, we're to send them to the Cambridge border, just outside of Rockton, and until they're all finished. Councillor Marula, please.
I might object to that.
No, I just want to congratulate Councillor Nat. I think this is a fabulous endeavor, and I can't help but it brings back memories of the debate of the location of that stadium, and I just want to recall the battle I had to have that stadium located there. I believe I was the only vote that ultimately at first fought it to make it happen to remain in Ward 3. And when the social justice issues come to the surface as a result, all I can say is, thank you, and I told you so. So I appreciate this tremendously, not only what we've done to date, but what we're going to do in the future. That location has made a significant difference, not only to Ward 3, and but it has to the entire lower city and the city of Hamilton. So I thank you for your time. Thanks. Great work, Councillor Nan.
Thank you, Councillor. There are no other speakers. Could I have the vote posted, please, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Chair, the vote carries.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
I transfer the chairmanship back to you, Madam.
Thank you, Vice Chair Powers. Next up on the agenda is item 12, which is notices of motion. We have a few here. Councillor Powers, you're up first with 12.1, and I understand you would like to waive the rules of order.
Thank you. On a motion moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek, I would like to move that we waive the rules, the introduction of notice of motion 12.1.
So we'll require electronic vote, 2/3. And that carries unanimously. Go ahead, Councillor Powers, please introduce your motion.
Thank you. The motion is before you. It's for the installation of a fence along the Green Hill Road. It's to replace an existing one. As you recall, at the last Public Works Committee meeting, I asked this be set aside while Kara Bunn and I had some on-site visitations and some further and so the motion before you is the one that we introduce. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's been moved and seconded.
By Councillor Vanderbeek.
Thank you. And the electronic vote is there. And that carries unanimously. Thank you. Next up is 12.2, road resurfacing and sidewalk repair on Rolston Drive between Miami Drive and Mountbatten Drive, Hamilton, and Ward 8. Councillor Danko, I understand you'd like to waive the rules. If you could please with your seconder.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by yourself, to waive the rules to put this on the agenda. The reason is to get it into the 2022 construction season. Thank you.
And again, 2/3, and the vote is up. And that carries 9-0. And Councillor, if you could please introduce your motion.
Thank you, Chair Nan. So moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Nan. This is for road resurfacing and sidewalk repairs on Rollston Drive. Whereas Rollston Drive between Miami Drive and Mountbatten is in poor condition and requires rehabilitation, and whereas reconstruction of Limbrook and Miami Drive from Millbank to Rollston is currently scheduled for the 2022 construction season, therefore be it resolved, A, that Public Works staff be authorized and directed to resurface the roads and repair the sidewalks on Rollston Drive between Miami Drive and Mountbatten at an estimated cost of $600,000. $500,000 to be funded from the Council Priority Ward 8 Minor Rehabilitation Fund, and the balance of approximately $100,000 to be funded from the Ward 8 Area Rating Reserve, and B, that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized and directed to execute any required agreements and documents. So just really quickly for committee and for the community, last year, through the Ward 8 Infrastructure Reserve, we allocated $750,000 for the work on Limbrook and Miami Drive. That was to be part of the 22 construction season. And that is a result of, they did water main relining in this neighborhood in 2020. So it left a number of sidewalks and test pits and holes in the road and things like that needed repair. And the road condition index, both of these roadways are in very poor condition. But at the time when we allocated our funds, I only had enough funding to do the Limbrook section, which was the worst case scenario. But since then, we've been able to find an additional funding in the budget. So we're adding on that portion on Rollston Drive, which is also in very poor condition and definitely needs rehabilitation. So that's a total of $1.35 million investment in 2022 in the Rollston neighborhood. And that follows a $1.25 million investment last season in the Bonington and Southam neighborhoods. And I know there's way more problems like that throughout the ward of roadways in desperate need of repair. And I'm doing as much as I can each season to take care of those needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And it's been moved and seconded. Nobody's on the speakers list. So it is before committee electronically. And please indicate otherwise.
Councillor Ferguson, are you able to vote? Thank you. Okay.
That carries 9-0. Thank you. On to 12.3, Phase 1, Ward 8, Complete Streets Review Implementation, Installation of Speed Cushions and Traffic Calming Measures at various locations. Councillor Danko, again, please.
So initially a motion to waive the rules. Again, this is to get this on to the 2022 construction season.
Okay, so 2/3 required, moved by Councillor Danko, seconded by myself. And that carries 9-0. Councillor, if you could please introduce your motion.
Thank you, Chair Nan. So moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Nan, that the Vision Zero and Complete Streets principles are used in the City of Hamilton to provide a safer environment for all road users. Whereas in 2020, a review of designated Ward 8 neighborhoods was initiated with the intent of providing a complete streets report identifying areas of concern and recommendations to provide a safer environment for all road users based on Vision Zero and Complete Streets principles. Whereas the Complete Streets review included a focus on traffic calming measures at problem locations, considering road width classification, surrounding land use, proximity to schools and playgrounds, access roads from arterials, on-street parking, and other considerations. Whereas there was extensive public consultation that was completed as part of the Ward 8 Complete Streets review. Whereas Phase 1 of the Ward 8 Complete Streets Review implementation strategy recommended the installation of speed cushions and other traffic calming measures on various roadways in Ward 8 based upon the study's review, input from residents, and needs assessment to aid in managing safe use of neighborhood roadways. And whereas Phase 2 of the Ward 8 Complete Streets Review implementation strategy is being finalized and is expected to include more complex traffic calming measures, including gateway features, curb bump outs, raised crosswalks, and other traffic safety installations. So therefore be it resolved that the transportation operations and maintenance staff be authorized and directed to install speed cushions as traffic calming measures on the following roadways as part of the spring 22 traffic calming application. I'm not going to read them all out, but they're there in the direction. And that the second part of this is subject to the recommendations provided within the Ward 8 Complete Streets Review that transportation operations and maintenance staff be authorized and directed to implement traffic calming measures on the second set of roadways that are in the direction before you. And that all the costs associated with the installation of the speed cushions and traffic calming measures be funded from the Ward 8 Capital Reinvestment Reserve to an upset limit, including contingency not to exceed $553,000, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized and directed to execute any legal requirements and documents satisfactory to the city solicitor. So, Madam Chair, if I could, this is direction that I am really excited to put on the floor. This started about 2 years ago with the implementation of the Ward 8 Complete Streets Review. And I'd really like to thank our acting director, Mike Field, for his work, along with his team, Eleni Dekenis, Josip Kafadar, and Peter Locke, as well as WSP Consulting, and Elsie McIntosh for getting this on the agenda late Friday. It's been a long process, but I think really rewarding. So back when I was first elected, we got and continue to get complaints and concerns about traffic safety, road safety from neighborhoods throughout the ward. And we would, bring these to traffic. They would investigate. And more often than not, the answer that we would get back was like, Councillor, yes, we know there's a perception of a problem, but it's not technically warranted to implement speed cushions or other traffic calming measures. And part of the problem is that we were only looking at individual streets or or roadways. We weren't looking at the neighborhood as a whole, entire communities. And there was some of the issues were that if we implemented traffic calming on one street, that it would shift traffic problems to another roadway. So it became kind of clear that what we really needed to do was take a comprehensive review of the entire road network through the entire ward. So the goal of this approach was to, basically a complete revision of driver behavior through engineering design and improve the safety on every neighborhood, on every street throughout the ward. So, like I said, that took about 2 years of engineering review, looking at all those factors of who's going where and why in the road network design. And it also involved very extensive community consultations. So there was outreach, ads in the newspaper. We had a number of public meetings, and also we were collecting and categorizing all the complaints and issues that residents raised over the years with us in order to identify priority locations where we needed immediate interventions. So what you have before you today is the initial phase 1 recommendations from the report. So these streets that have been identified are the priority roadways where neighborhoods, where residents have said we need intervention, and where the engineering design has shown that intervention can be the most effective. So the first set are speed cushions that'll be installed in the spring of 2022. And the second set are some additional interventions where we've identified roads that need work and safety improvements, but we're not quite sure if speed cushions or some other installation might be a better fit there. But we're still allocating the funding so that work can be done in the 2022 construction season. And then, as the motion states, the goal is to follow with a second phase of traffic calming installations that'll include measures that are a little bit more complex, that the consulting engineers are still working out the details for right now with the Ward 8 Complete Streets review. So those would include things like gateway features, chicanes, curb bump outs, raised crosswalks, and other more significant roadway safety installations that require some additional engineering design work. So like I said, this has been 2 years of work by our staff and input from residents. And I'm really excited to see the impact that this has on the Ward 8 neighborhoods and hopefully drastically increase the roadway safety for all road users, drivers, cyclists, pedestrians, anybody that is in the city of Hamilton right away in our Ward 8 neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Very comprehensive approach. Speakers list is activated. I don't see anybody else on it, in which case it's moved and seconded and before committee to vote electronically or indicate otherwise.
Councillor Ferguson, are you able to vote? Thank you.
And that carries 9-0.
Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Any other notices of motion, committee members? Seeing none, we'll move on to general information and other business. First up is 13.1, amendments to the OBL, the items that were identified during the agenda amendment. I guess I need a mover and seconder first for the amendments to the OBL. Moved by Councillor Powers, second by Councillor Vanderbeek. Thank you both. Any comments on the amendments? Seeing none, then please vote electronically or indicate otherwise. And that carries 9-0. Thank you, committee members. Any other business or general information?
I have one, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. It's for Susan Jacobs. Are you still online, Susan?
Acting Director. Engineering Services, looks like she is no longer on the line. Sorry, Councillor.
Okay, I'm just going to put this on the record then, because the Southcote Road reconstruction was the environmental study and was completed and approved 4 years ago now. And it had to go through some utility relocates and design, but it was anticipated that it would be built in 2021. In late 2021, they said they still had some design issues and they wanted to defer and tender in the winter and spring of 2022. Now I'm told it won't go again. And this is just downright embarrassing for me because I've gone public with this. And so is the GM on the line? The acting GM?
Yes, acting GM Craig Murdoch is on the line.
So Craig, I haven't gone public that this thing's been delayed again, and I haven't had full confirmation that it is. I've got it from a pretty good source, but not from Susan herself or from you. So will Southcote Road proceed to construction this year?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't have the answer to that, but I will have Susan give you a call so that you can ask her directly.
Because we simply cannot let this go another year. It dragged out for 4 years now. 2 years when it was supposed to go to construction, and I can't face the public that I misled them again. So if you could get back to me, I'd appreciate that, or Susan, or both.
Thank you, Councillor. So you'll have the offline answer. Next up is Councillor Marula.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just to whoever can answer this, and if they can't, no problem. And my apologies for springing this without giving anyone notice, but between Barton Street and, on Barton Street, between Parkdale to Talbot, now apparently the bid went in and it's come back, and because of the COVID aspects and the impact on supplies, it's come in higher. So there will be a request for additional funds. Can someone, if they can, if not, no worries, we can do it at the next meeting. Can someone just give us an update on when that report will be coming forward so that work can start, and when will it, I know it's going to be completed into 2023. I guess the question at this point from the community is, when will it start, since there's a delay directly correlated to COVID-19 and the rise of costs?
Councillor Marula, is this the Barton resurfacing project?
Yes.
Okay.
And the underground, there's infrastructure as
Yeah,
well.
it's a full reconstruction. Yep.
So for the community is just asking for an update.
Yep, same here in Ward 3. Our project is tied in multiple phases throughout Barton. Acting General Manager Craig Murdoch.
Through you, Madam Chair, similar answer as to I gave to Councillor Ferguson. I'll have Susan give you a call so that she can update you on this.
Okay, and if we could perhaps get something in writing so I can promote it with my constituents as well, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Will do.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Oh, and welcome back.
Thank you all, and thank you, Acting GM Murdoch, for taking on those added items. Last item on the agenda is adjournment. Who's going to move and second it? Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Powers. Electronic vote, or please indicate otherwise. And while that vote is being registered, thank you to all the staff who have supported this meeting. And thank you again to the delegate who came to present today. And hope you all have a good rest of your Monday. And survey says we can adjourn almost. Did the votes get through? Carried. Have a great